both of you have written about the tragedy of young American Jews, maybe some people in this room, that have no connection to Judaism and the fate of the Jewish state. So let's say you were stuck in an elevator with one of the people from that demographic, and you had 2 minutes to make them a sell. You have a 2-minute sell about why they should re-engage with Jewishness and Zionism and with the Jewish people.
I wouldn't engage in it. I wouldn't engage in that conversation. When in the Gemara, there's this whole thing where the Ger comes to Hillel and Shammai and asks him to teach me the whole Torah while I stand on one foot. One of the things that people don't understand about that little incident where Shammai throws him out is that the question itself is an outrageously obnoxious question. You say to Shammai and to Hillel, frankly, explain to me while I stand on one foot everything that makes your world meaningful. It's dismissive. And I wouldn't try to take 2 minutes in an elevator to try to convince somebody to be a moral human being. And I wouldn't try to take 2 minutes in an elevator to try to convince somebody why a life spent loving another person is a life, though more complicated, infinitely worthwhile. And I wouldn't try to convince somebody in 2 minutes why being a patriot is a noble thing. There's certain conversations that simply don't deserve 2 minutes. They deserve years of upbringing. And I know, and you see, the crowd looks a little bit different than it did in my days. We had actually typewriters, and we didn't tweet questions. We had index cards, and when the library closed, you actually couldn't look up a source. It was a very different time. But in any event, I think we've gotten too used to the idea that important things can be summarized on the screen of an iPhone or a BlackBerry, and we believe too strongly that really powerful arguments and important things can be said in 2 minutes. So I would actually here, as unpopular as he is in current parlance, side with Shammai and not with Hillel. I'm not going to have that conversation because it demeans everything that I stand for. You want to have a serious conversation about why I think Judaism at its tribal is also its most profound and most noble. Let's spend months and years studying together, and then we'll begin to talk.
Maybe to add a little bit more fodder to this question, should the tens of millions of dollars that go to Birthright every year be going to subsidize Jewish education instead?
Well, I guess I'd start...
You give him that one, you give it after I speak. That's great. Okay.
I'm choosing the ones that you both agree on.
Look, on questions of Israeli policy and how we should respond to them, Daniel and I have, as you've seen, very substantial disagreements. But I have to say, when he gives answers like that, I'm still tempted to think it would be nice to have him as my rabbi. I think that I could not have stated it so eloquently, but I could not more profoundly agree with what he says. And in fact, when he writes on these topics, rather than on the topics of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, I often find his writing both convincing and deeply moving. And I think he's entirely right. It's too late by that point, and the kid who asks that question has, in fact, been failed by our community, which, in fact, today says to American Jewish parents, the most important thing you can do is to raise children with knowledge of, joy in, and fascination with Judaism. But, by the way, if you're interested in the possibility of a full-time Jewish school, you're going to have to take a second mortgage out on your house. And by the way, the school's not likely to have a gym, and we don't even know if it's going to be around in 3 years. But go for it. And that's precisely why we end up... That's precisely why we end up with kids who would ask that insulting question in the elevator. On the question of birthright, I think that it is terrific to send young American Jewish kids to Israel, to be able to have... I'm a big believer in Jewish schools, obviously, but I also think it's wonderful for American Jewish kids to have the opportunity to have the incredible experiences I had when I was a child throughout Israel, at the kotel, at the beaches, all certain kind of experiences they seem to often have with Israeli soldiers. I think it's all to the good. My only critique would be that 20% of Israel's population inside the Green Line are not Jews, and 50% of the people between the river and the sea are not Jews. They're Palestinians. And it seems to me, precisely because we want people to have a real and deep connection to the state of Israel and to the people who live in the state of Israel, that we should allow them to have an experience with those people as well. Because in fact, true love of a country is based on honesty, even if that honesty can be painful, even if it means seeing warts. And I think instead of alienating young American Jewish kids, I think it would actually draw them deeper to a connection with the real Israel.